Well, that's just to highlight to you the state of Ekpoma Road. The Benin, Abuja, Benin, Auchi, Benin, Ekpoma, Auchi, Okene, Abuja Expressway, particularly the Ekpoma axis, Ekpoma section of that road is a complete write-off. As we speak at the moment, you can't drive through the expressway. It's completely dilapidated. You can't drive through it. You can't. And if you have to go through Ekpoma Township, that means within the next few weeks or months, those roads also will go back because of the pressure. All right. So we expect that the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, the Federal Ministry of Works, Housing, will also expedite action on that road. The contractors awarded those contracts should wake up from their slumber and get to work. If you look at a certain section of that road, serious attentions are being given to them. But for the Ekpoma axis, nothing is happening. Practically nothing is happening. So we hope that we'll be able to connect with Comrade Prosper Iyeri and Comrade Jude Obasumi so we can talk with them much later in the show. But at this point in time, let's get to talk about culture, ethnic and historical linkages, what we can do to explore all of these to make better impact in the society that we live in. And I have with me in the studio I'll call him, I like to call him a cultural activist, but he's the coordinator of Association of Great Benin Descendants. Thank you for joining me. It's always a delight to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, what is it about your passion when it comes to issues, traditional issues, ethnic issues, historical issues? What is it about it as it relates to passion from you?
Well, not too far-fetched. It's my university upbringing.
Okay.
Ascot University of Ile-Ife.
Okay.
As a Benin person, when you school in prominent universities, most especially those ones domiciled in Ile-Ife,
yeah,
you get to hear things about the relationship between Benin generally with the Ile-Ife people. And so if you're conscious enough, you want to know what was that historical linkages. So I heard a couple of times of that historical connection between the Benins and the Ile-Ife people, most especially the royal house of Benin, yeah, and the Ile-Ife people. So okay, I wasn't satisfied with all of those talk that I heard from the Yoruba historians and Yoruba people generally. Okay. So I picked interest basically in history, and it's been headway since, and then have been sort of a cultural activist, like you said, yeah, and then trying to bring the real history, setting the history in the right perspective to our people so that they can actually understand what history is all about and okay, how the old Benin society had sway, yeah, and how they were able to create an empire that the world envied, yeah, and then how we could be able to bring the socio-cultural of the old and yeah, try to instill it because of the moral decadence
in the society today,
in present day society. So
okay,
these are some of the specs of the things I've wanted to look into critically, yeah, and touched. And in course of doing that, I choose another novel path. I discovered that if the Benin Empire was that huge until it was wrongfully invaded in 1897 by the British, yeah, what could have happened to that vast empire? Yeah. The earliest Europeans dating back to 15th century, yeah, all recorded of the greatness of this place. So okay, I picked a sort of a lot of interest.
Okay.
I saw that.
There's so much to learn in all of this. Yeah. Okay, but are you in any way concerned about some sort of distortions in these ethnic, historical, and cultural linkages? I've heard some historians, maybe they want to be phony, they try history, so you cannot really establish that pathway the way it was originally. Are you bothered about that? If you are, what are you doing to see how we can bridge that gap?
I think it's more of like first, as an historian, they tell you that there's a dynamism in history.
Okay.
There is not an ultimate history teller. All right. Every history that you see, there are elements of biases. If I'm going to write a Benin history, I'm going to write according to what I feel works for my people, rather than put it straight.
Straight.
Well, there are a lot of historical fallacies that have been propagated all these years against the Benin people, notably the Yoruba people, for example, where they postulated that the Benin kings all hailed from Ile-Ife,
Yeah.
and all of these things have been found to be untrue because we've had superior knowledge. The reason that these things had sway, they were privileged to use the Western education to sort of subvert these historical truths for quite some time, until the Benin people in the 60s and 70s started to get acquainted with press and starting to use a printing press to also counter these fallacies. So, but in all of these, I've, since 2016, I've been a very crucial historical crusader. I've changed the perception of quite a lot of Benin people to actually know the truth of the true reality of the history that was possessed, and not the fallacy that has been propagated for years that for whatever reasons that some of our ancestors accepted and couldn't counter.
Yeah.
Until I think the greatest, I will always say that one of the greatest achievements that Obaride said memory was it's a legendary book that was published in 2004.
Yeah.
I remain your obedient servant.
Yeah.
Therefore, he stated it clearly of the parentage or the heritage of Oduduwa and how he was a Benin prince and all of that.
Yeah.
So since that 2004, there have been this uprising of young Benin intellectuals to try to form the ideas of the chief custodian of our heritage.
Yeah.
And we've been holding various ways. And so to a large extent, we now believe that a lot of Benin people can't stand shoulders with any other tribe, neighboring tribes in terms of history. And that's
Fantastic. Fantastic. I was reading some time ago, and I think it's in, I can't remember whether it's Angola or Equatorial Guinea, where there is a community that is solely made up of the Igbos.
Okay.
Apparently, it's possible we had an Igbo person who migrated to that place, stayed there and established himself and has created that community. What is the level of linkage between that community and the eastern part of the don't know. Okay. Now, you mentioned that considering the vastness of the Benin Empire back in the days, you discover that there's been some spreading. So what is the level of linkages to be able to have that uniformity, that unity, forge a common front, and ensure that these linkages, we can tap into it, exploit for mutual benefit?
Well, there has been since 2017, when I first discovered that the letter was written by the Ikwere people.
Ikwere people?
Yeah, which the present governor of River State is from, Nyesom Wike, of their Benin heritage.
So the Ikwere people, they are from Benin? Yeah,
I saw that letter.
Wow.
I read history at the Institute for Benin Studies. Probably they have the highest, we have the highest authority on Benin history-related matters in Benin Kingdom. Okay. So that's where I saw the letter. They wanted the institute to establish as a boarding historian. I saw that letter. So I had asked the director, Mr. Ikorigi Obobaifo, of what the implication was. He told me of a lot of Benin people, a lot of Benin descendants that are no longer in Edo State. So I picked interest. So I started to study, I started to read. Then we created a group, and that eventually metamorphosed to be what is now called Association of Great Benin Descendants. Okay. The primary aim to first of all identifying all of these ethnic groups that traces their ancestry to Benin and find a way to connect with them. Since 2017, we've identified over 54 of these ethnic groups.
Wow.
Well,
across the world, African continent, or across Nigeria?
Across African continent.
Wow.
All right. About a few weeks ago, I also went to Ghana. The owners of the Accra, called the Ga people, also traces their ancestry
to Benin.
So I've been there consistently. In the past 4 years, I've been there 3 times. All right, they have a festival that they call Obeneshimo. First Saturday, that festival holds every first Saturday of July every year.
Wow.
It's a festival that reenacts the day they left Benin.
Wow.
These are not speculations. So I have moved, over these years, I've moved from speculative history
to reality.
Yeah, factual history.
Okay.
I have been there. All right.
So you interacted with them physically, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Not just the social media lullabies. When I mean that, there are a lot of people who says that these people are not from these people because they want to make a point.
Okay.
Like when you go to Delta, they are going to say that the Car people are not related to Benin people there. Igbos are going to tell you that they are Igbo people. All right, but on ground, that's not true.
Okay.
All right, on social media, that's the argument. I've moved beyond social media because I've been there. I've related with the kings, their elites, with their social cultural group, their states, and their evidences and facts. Though these languages would not differ because they had proximity to the Igbo countries.
Okay.
So the tradings and
interaction,
over the years
has brought them closer together.
If, for example, that my parents was born and raised in Germany, and I was born there, I should speak German, but it doesn't make me a German.
Absolutely.
Exactly, that's what's going on in all of these spaces. But if you look at the context of their royalty, if you look at their traditional practices, they still retain the true concept of the Benin. All right, I've been to Delta, I've been to Bayelsa, I've been to River State. Almost about 85% of the entire population of River State is Benin. We have almost 50% in Bayelsa. The 2 ethnic groups are owned, the Yenagwa, the AP, and the Artisets.
Yeah.
They are Benin people. They trace their ancestry to Benin. So all of these facts have been emasculated over the years for about 5 years. So I have a feed, I've done a feed research, and I have a knowledge of a feed researcher for this past 5 years. So when I speak on some of these issues, I'm not speaking as one juvenile, I'm speaking as an authority because I've had close relationship, I've had close rapport with these people.
And there are empirical facts to back them up.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. When you want to talk about River State, for example, the 3 major ethnic groups that owns River State, that has the highest population of River State, are called Ekbeye, the Ogba people, and the Ikwere. All right. Now the Ekbeye, they had the same father called Akalaka, who was a Benin warrior that migrated from here and even married a Benin woman. All right. During the transition, all right, he gave birth to the first, the second son, and the last child was Uwiriona. All right, Iwuroha, rightly called. But because when the colonialists came, and sometimes in the 40s, there was this language barrier, and the translators were majorly Igbos who could translate the Ikwere language, the Iwuroha original language, to the British. And they kept saying Unkwere, they kept saying Unkwere and Unkwere and Unkwere. And eventually what we discovered was that the name, that Unkwere means, yes, we agree, that sort of a thing, and became the name that they were not known as. All right, but the original name was Uwiriona or Iwuroha. So these are spectacles of history.
Fantastic, fantastic.
That we want to take a proper advantage of, and how we can be able to relate to this.
Exactly the point I'm going to. Now, life itself is dynamic.
Yes.
Culture, there's a lot of influences as we get older, as the days go by, years go by, a whole lot of changes are taking place. We more or less, even though we say it's a global village, all of these discoveries are bound to change with time. How do we explore all of these? How do we explore in terms of forming that cultural identity, ethnic identity? For example, every year there are certain activities that takes place in Benin Kingdom, under His Royal Majesty. How much of the level of participation do we see from all of these linkages that exists across the world? Yeah, quickly.
Okay. First, you have to understand this. We are currently doing that. When I started the crusade, a couple of years ago, I had an intention. When I started the crusade a couple of years ago, I had an intention. The first intention was that I've always realized that with the magnitude of the empire that was built by the Benin people, we have no reason to be called minority.
Oh.
We have no reason to be called minority.
Okay.
We are minority because we have divided ourselves, and with the concept of these modern and ethnic identification.
Okay.
All right. So in the old, we're all called Benin people because we're covered with the same umbrella of Benin. It doesn't really matter. So the people that are referred to as the Benin people today, we're not the only people who made Benin or who made Benin Empire.
Yeah.
The Asans were part of it.
Absolutely.
The Isakos were part of it. The Urubos were part of it. The Isokos were part of it.
Yeah.
The Ekbaya were part of it.
The Shakiris were part of it.
And all of that.
Yeah.
So now, when the British came, they brought a quota system that divided us. All right, we now begin to see ourselves as Urobo, Isoko, Benin, Esan, Esako. But in the old, we're all identified with one name, Benin.
Yeah, Benin.
All right, so if we now consciously understand the politics that played against us by identifying ourselves again as Benin, it doesn't take our modern day a tribal identification from us. If you identify yourself as being Benin, it doesn't make you less of an Esan. It's the bringer umbrella that covers all of you. Yoruba is a very good example. If you look at Yoruba as an ethnic group, what the name was is sort of an ethnic identification. It doesn't portray the heritage of these groups. And Ekitima has a different history from an Ibadama. And Oyoma has a different history from an Ilajema. And Egbama has a different history from an Ifema. But the wisdom of Awolowo, he needed to bring these people a name to self-identify these people as one, came as Yoruba, even if they had different history that relate them to different heritage. All right, because the Egba people believe they came from Sudan, which is different from what the Ife people believe, and all of that. So then I have a Yoruba that identify them because it gives them an economic power, a political power. And that's why when a Yoruba man wants to contest for president today, it's a lot easier. A Benin man cannot come out to contest for president today because we're a minority. But if we come together, we become
stronger.
We become stronger. And the question that you've asked, what have we done? Bigger, because the first time since all of these years, the Oba of Benin is going to be inviting all of these kings to Benin to participate in the Igwe festival. So we've been able to convince His Royal Majesty the real ideas behind this. There's a need for us to come together. There's so much that we can benefit in terms of economy, in terms of politics, in terms of socio-cultural existence. So, and these are some of the things that is currently under the pipeline. And we're very proud that this year the world is going to come to standstill the ideas that we've been working on for this past 5-6 years.
All right. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
I mean, when someone look at you, probably because you're a young man, you know, it will be very difficult to have this kind of comprehension about the level of depth and the level of, information at your disposal about ethnic, cultural, and historical linkages, particularly under the platform of Association of Great Benin Descendants, which of course you've been using to say how you can harness the potentials in these linkages. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Any parting words?
Words I want to say is that we are not minorities, we are majorities if we begin to look beyond what the
individualism and look at the collectivism as relates to all of us working together.
There's so much advantage that we can collect.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's still TMI Thursday. We'll take a short break and then we'll be talking with one of the striking group in the university system that has called off the strike. They've resumed work. Celebration in that regard. We'll be talking with Comrade Osawa in a moment. I told you it's a loaded edition of the program. Please stay with us. We'll be back with you shortly.